Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This will be the orientation webinar for the fiscal year 2018 CACFP Meal Service Training Grants for state agencies. A few housekeeping items before we begin. Everyone is in listen-only mode, and we will take questions at the end of the webinar by the chat box on the bottom left corner of your screen. You can type in your questions at any point during the webinar, and we will take questions at the end. Also in the chat box at the bottom left corner, you will see information to call in by phone if you're having any technical issues hearing us through your computer speakers. You can use the phone line and the access code provided. So good afternoon again. My name is Franceli KG. I am a nutritionist with the FNS Child Nutrition Program, and I am also the Program Officer for the CACFP grants. And with me in the room is our Grants Officer, Anna Aerosmith, and we will be your point of contact for this grant. So in communications with us, if it's by email, please CC both of us on the email. I handle the program content side, Anna handles the financial matters, but we work really closely together, so please copy us both on email. So a big congratulations to our 38 state agencies that received the CACFP Meal Service Training Grants. There was a total of more than $3.7 million that were awarded, and we are happy to report that we have grantees from all 7 FNS regions. So thank you for your participation, and we look forward to your projects. This map shows all of the states that have received grants. The states that are in gray did not apply and did not receive funding through this CACFP Meal Service Training Grant. And this slide just lists out all the states by region. So just a reminder, the purpose of this grant is to support the Child and Adult Care Food Program and training efforts specific to successful implementation of the CACFP meal patterns. Potential training topics are shown on the slide, and the applications we received reflected activities in all of these areas and will target a variety of audiences, including CACFP participating child care centers, adult care centers, family daycare homes, at-risk after-school programs, and emergency shelters. Activities and topics that are not allowed under this grant are nutrition education and gardening. So just to remind you, Team Nutrition supports these 2 topics in other grant opportunities, and Farm to School is another grant vehicle that supports much of the gardening and kind of farm education efforts. But these CACFP Meal Service Training Grants are not to be used for these 2 topic areas. This grant has a 2-year period of performance. The official start date was September 30th, 2018, and I believe there may be a typo on the screen, but the end date when all activities must be completed and funds must be used is September 30th, 2020. So if you've participated in previous team nutrition, maybe team nutrition training grants, especially of late, you may be familiar with heavier evaluation requirements, but this grant does not have a heavy evaluation requirement. So we do encourage all grantees to monitor your progress towards the goals and the objectives that you all outlined in your application. The progress reports are due annually. So the first one is due September 30th, 2019. And the progress reports allow you all to tell us how you are doing compared to what you proposed in your application. It also allows you the opportunity to share solutions that you are implementing to address any deviations from your plan, and to really brag on yourself and tell us how many participants you're reaching through your training, and any other pertinent information or explanation you'd like to provide. And this chart on the screen just outlines the schedule for when the progress reports are due. It also identifies when the financial reports are due, which is also on an annual basis. The final project report and final financial report is due December 2020, which is a few months after the 3 months, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little less than 3 months, but around 3 months of the close of your grant activities. So please keep this date in mind.
And now it's me. Hi, everybody. This is Anna Aerosmith. I'm going to actually ask you to do my advance my slides for me. So the financial reports are submitted online and through the Food Programs Reporting System, affectionately referred to as FIPRs. So because you are all state agencies, I'm going to assume that there's already somebody in your agency that submits this for you for other grant programs that you may already be participating in. Whoever's in charge of submitting those financial reports will need to add this grant program to it, but they should be all set up. You want to let that person know that if you look at the third bullet, it's the CACFP meal train, and your financial staff will need to update their FIPRS profile. I sent a message about this last month, and in response to that, I did get a lot of emails from state agencies adding it. So I would say a good bit of you are already set up, if not all. If you go to your finance person and tell them they need to do this and they give you a blank stare, just refer them to me, have them shoot me an email, and I'll give them everything they need to get set up. For those of you that do have more than just this FNS grant, you just want to be careful that you don't commingle your funds. You want to make sure that the funds for the CACFP grant are in one pot of money and your other grants are in their own pots of money, and never shall the two meet. You want to just make sure that you keep everything separate. If you need to make any amendments to your grant, we want you to do that in writing, and by writing we mean email. You don't have to send us an actual piece of paper in the mail. That actually can take forever to get to me. So just send an email and send it to both Fran Steele and myself. As she mentioned earlier, we work pretty closely together on these, and it's something that the two of us are usually going to be discussing together anyway. The regulations say that you want to send this no later than 10 days before the grant period ends. But I'm going to say that if you need to make an amendment, chances are that if you're staying on top of things, you're going to know well ahead of 10 days before the grant period ends that you're going to need to make a revision to your project. So the more time you give yourself, the better it's going to be. So let us know with as much advance notice as you possibly can. What we recommend that you do is check your timeline at least quarterly and just make sure that your project is on track. And if you feel that you're not progressing the way you'd originally planned, just give one of us a buzz and we'll see what we can do to help out. So there's some grant amendments do require prior approval from FNS. Any kind of change in project scope or a revision of the goals and objectives or adding new activities, I can tell you that first bullet there, that's not typically something that we allow because even though these are non-competitive grants, we still did review them, and we asked clarification questions from a lot of you. So we made the decision to award these grants based on what you have submitted to us. So if you submit something completely different, we're going to have to reevaluate that. If you're going to be shifting funds between line items in excess of 10% of your total budget, that's something that you need to run by us first. That 10% is a cumulative amount. So for example, if you shift 5% of your budget now and then in another few months you shift another 7%, that pushes you over that 10% threshold with that second shift, and you would need to come to us for prior approval during that time. If you need to, if there's a delay in your project timeline and you need an extension, obviously you need to come to us for that as well to approve. I will tell you that we are hesitating to approve extensions these days, but with legitimate circumstances we would certainly review that. But again, we would much rather work with you ahead of time to make sure we can help you stay on track in the existing timeline. And just so you know, I think this is the case with all government everywhere, there are no additional funds available for these. So if you need to add new activities or find that you under budgeted for something, I'm afraid we don't have additional funds for that. There are some amendments that do not require prior approval, but you still need to notify us that you're making these changes. So if you're going to shift funds between budget line items of 10% or less of your total budget, you don't need to ask permission first. You do still need to let us know, and you can make a note of that in your progress report. You can send a separate email just saying, I'm notifying you that I'm making this change. If you are shifting between budget categories, so for example, if you have money budgeted for personnel and you're not going to be using it all and you're going to shift it to supplies or contractual, then you need to submit a revised SF424A and send that to me. This slide pertains to those of you that are going to be awarding any sub-grants as part of your larger grant. And essentially what you need to do is you need to screen your sub-grantees and make sure that they're in good fiscal standing and they're not suspended or debarred from applying for any federal grants. And you can look them up via the sam.gov website here. At the end of the grant, there is a 90-day closeout period at the end of the grant, and that is used for the grantees, to pay any outstanding bills, finalize your final progress and financial reports. So the grant ends on September 30th, 2020. You may not incur any new costs or continue any activities beyond September 30th, but you have until December 31st to pay any outstanding bills and submit your final reports, as long as it doesn't cost anything. So what we expect you to do if you are going to incur closeout costs, and I will say most grantees do not, but some do, and it typically is, as I mentioned on the last slide, it's for paying any outstanding bills and finalizing your reports. And the costs associated with that are usually staff time. So what we prefer that you do, because you can't really charge any money to the grant once the September 30th rolls around, is you want to front load that. You want to determine what the costs are going to be, and you want to draw down those funds before September 30th if you can. At least determine what they will be so you can at least obligate them, if not draw them down by September 30th. Okay, and this is my last slide, is a biggie, and these are just the regulations that govern federal grants. So we simplify it and give you terms and conditions to read, and we give you an agreement to sign, but all of these regulations here you are responsible for. The bolded one, 2 CFR Part 200, is the primary regulation governing the administration of your grants, and that's where you'll find answers to many of your questions. Of course, we are here to answer your questions, but if there's anything you need in a hurry and you can't reach us, you can find all of your answers here. The link up at the top of the slide is for an online searchable code of federal regulations, which is the only version I use. I don't even have that big old book anymore. So that's it for me, and I'm going to turn it back over to Francine now.
Thank you, Anna. I'm going to cover a little more details and go into more specifics of this grant and our training resources as well. So just a note on record retention, and this goes for all of our child nutrition grants. The grant materials, which could be surveys, applications, invoices, documentation, should be kept for 3 years after the grant closes. So those are important for management evaluations or administrative reviews or even audits. So please keep your documentation so you are covered in any situation. On the screen, you'll see the USDA Non-Discrimination Statement. There are 2 versions. We have the full version and the abbreviated version. If space is limited on some of your print materials, if you're printing something related to this funding, like we've seen little booklets or recipe cards, that would be too small for the full non-discrimination statement, you can use the abbreviated version. And this is just additional information related to USDA policies. Also, if you are publicizing work under this grant, maybe a print poster or, I don't know, a website that you created for this grant, you are required to acknowledge the support of USDA SNS whenever you publicize work under this grant. So, like I said, websites, posters, press releases, journal articles, any kind of public presentations. So please use the language that is on the slide. And it's also located in the terms and conditions that came with your grant award letter. And these are the details related to copyright. These go along with all of our funding opportunities as well. Okay, now this slide talks about the Team Nutrition logo and its usage, but this is really late breaking. This policy is under review by our communications office, so I would ask that you hold off on using the Team Nutrition logo on anything that you're going to print until this new policy is finalized. And when it is finalized, we will communicate it with you all on how the logo can and cannot be used. So just some tips for success, kind of reminding you what Anna stated earlier. It's important to stay on track with your timeline and communicate with us if there is a deviation, and the sooner the better. And don't wait until the end of the grant period to submit an amendment or a request for reallocation. So we know that staff turnover does happen, so please keep us updated of any changes to staff and the key personnel for this grant. So if there is a staffing change in, let's say, the project director, we do need the resume of the new director to be submitted to us so we can keep it on file with your grant materials, with your application materials. So I see we do have a couple of questions in the chat box. One is asking about if the slides will be distributed after the webinar, and I see there is an answer put into the box that yes, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Team Nutrition website in a few weeks. And then there's another question that's a little more detailed about the non-discrimination statement. So let me save that one to address at the end. Anna, do you want to take the SIPRS one now? Or?
Sure. The question is, what will be asked of the grantees to report in FIPRS to ensure that you are adequately tracking throughout the year? Also, can you speak about FIPRS access, specifically if there's a requirement for a person with FIPRS entry role and FIPRS certify role? Okay, so what is going to be asked of you to report in FIPRS? It's just like with the quarterly reports, and only it's on an annual basis. So there's a lot less micromanaging of these grants on our part as far as that goes. I'm not sure if you want to elaborate on that question a little bit. I might be able to answer that one a little bit better. Asking about the FIPRS access, you don't have to have a person, you don't have to have two people, one with data entry and one with certify. A lot of state agencies do, and that is an internal decision within the state. As far as we're concerned, it's okay if one person does both data entry and certify. I go in once you certify a report and I compare what you've stated with what we show in our financial records. And if there's a great deviation, then I'll reach out to you. And if not, then I go ahead and post the report. There's another question asking if we can put the contact slide back up. I'm going to put that off until the end, and then we'll put that information back up at the end of the webinar, because we've got a few more slides after this one. This is a little break for questions before we inundate you with more stuff.
Yeah, thank you guys for putting those questions in the chat box. Okay, so now I'm going to review some of our newer training resources from Team Nutrition, some additional resources from our partners that you all can use in implementing training related to this grant. So also as a reminder, this grant is focused on the delivery of, training rather than the creation of training materials. So please keep these resources in mind as you plan your trainings. So we have a series of CACFP meal pattern training worksheets. I think we just released one last month, and I think there are a few more coming out, so stay tuned. They are also the focus of our CACFP halftime webinars. So these resources, we've gotten really great response from CACFP operators and state agencies as well, that they are great to be used for training in their centers or at their sites to help staff understand and better follow the meal patterns. This is one of our newer worksheets in the series that is focused on whole grains and adding whole grains to your CACFP menu. It's available online, and all of our worksheets are available both in English and Spanish. And on the bottom of the screen, you can see a few additional topics that are coming soon. Other resources that are coming soon are the Feeding Infants in the CACFP and Breastfed Babies Welcome Here. So those can support training on the infant meal pattern. In addition to USDA's Team Nutrition Resources, we also work closely with ICN, the Institute of Child Nutrition. And they offer many resources in print and online that can be used to train CACFP providers on the meal pattern. They have posters that depict the meal pattern, materials regarding food safety, information on food allergies, culinary videos that walk through recipes, and many more. All of these materials are available free, and more information can be found at www.theicn.org, which is at the top of the screen, or top of the slide. SNS has also worked with the Institute of Child Nutrition to develop an 8-hour in-person CACFP meal pattern requirements training, which can be used to train providers, sponsoring organizations, and others on the CACFP meal pattern requirements. This 8-hour training consists of 3 main sections: one section on the infant meal pattern, one section on the child and adult meal patterns, and one section on optional CACFP best practices. ICN has developed an online version of this training as well, now available through their e-learning portal. The CACFP meal pattern requirements online courses do not all have to be completed in one sitting. Instead, each course can be completed in chunks and will allow you to stop and resume where you left off to complete at a later time. Now, based on what our states submitted in their proposals, we gathered that the grant funds will be used in a variety of ways. Some states are using the funds to support trainings led by the state agency staff. Trainings are also being conducted in partnership with other organizations such as the Institute of Child Nutrition. At least half of the proposals that we received mentioned ICN and the project narrative, which is great. We love to see USDA-related resources being used. ICN offers a wealth of knowledge and resources to support CACFP meal service training. It looks like the photos didn't show up on the slide, but our webinar series that Team Nutrition puts on to support CACFP meal patterns and trainings are our CACFP Trainer Circle webinars, which are quarterly webinars, and our CACFP Halftime 30 on Thursday webinars, which in fiscal year 2019, so starting in January, they will be taking place every other month. Both of these webinars are recorded and will be posted on the Team Nutrition website. For the CACFP Halftime 30 on Thursday webinars, they are available both in English and Spanish. The English webinars are held at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Spanish webinars are held at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And here's a listing of webinars that we have done in the CACFP halftime series. And these can be accessed online using the website that's shown on top of the slide. Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on all things team nutrition, when new resources are released or when a new webinar is coming out, you can subscribe to the Team Nutrition e-newsletter. There's a link on our homepage for new subscribers, and it's on the left side of the screen, and it is quick to sign up, and you can stay up to date with all of the new CACFP resources. Information about the CACFP Meal Service Training Grant will be maintained on the Team Nutrition website. And the URL for that page is at the top of the screen. The page does provide a list of helpful links and resources related to the grant, as well as a list of participating states. And FNS would like to add project descriptions for each grantee to better inform the public of how the funds are being used. So in our follow-up emails after this webinar, we will ask you to provide a brief summary of your grant activities, no more than 2 to 3 sentences, so we can add it to this web page to inform others about what activities you guys are doing. Okay, now we've come to the end of our portion of the webinar. We'd like to take questions. If there are additional ones, please type them in the chat box bottom left. And we had a request to repost the slide with our contact information. So I'm going to go back to that slide towards the beginning of the presentation. So once again, my name is Francine KG. My phone number is on the screen, as well as my email address. And Anna is our grants officer. Her phone number and email address is on the screen as well.
We're laughing here because we just found a typo on the screen. So all FNS email addresses have the same naming convention. It's first name dot last name at fns.usda.gov. So when you're emailing Francine, if you don't already have a grant and don't already have her in your address book, please use the spelling in the black text above her email address. We're so sorry about that.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat box as well for you all. Maybe easier to copy and paste.
Any other questions for us in the meantime? You get bonus points if you find another typo on our slides.
Okay, let's see. Okay, we have a question. Are there any specific types of data you would like collected or assessed? Mostly outcome data is what I'm thinking about. Okay. We will be providing a sample kind of reporting format that's totally optional to use, but we are looking for mostly outcome data. So how many participants you trained, what was the content of your training, how long was it, were you training, what was the audience of your training, operators at a site, what type of site, a home, or a daycare center or child care center. So information like that. As I stated at the beginning, there's less of an evaluation burden on these meal service training grants, but we will be putting out a suggested optional reporting template in the coming weeks. Heather, I'm not ignoring your question. I did see this earlier. Heather's question is, the non-discrimination statement is different than what is required for child nutrition programs. So if we use this one, will it cover what's required by both the grant and FNS for nutrition programs?
You know, these things have changed on us occasionally. We will figure out what the correct one is and send it out via email to the whole group of grantees.
Yes, thank you for that question. I'm
sorry for the discrepancy.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat box. And so we'll wait just like one more minute in case someone's typing.
No questions too silly.
Right. Ask away. We're ready to answer. Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we appreciate your time this afternoon. We look forward to working with you all over the period of performance for this grant. And we will follow up with an email requesting the 2 to 3 sentence summary of your project. And there's one more kind of announcement I did want to make. We are putting together a document that we would like you to fill out so we can better fulfill your print needs. So if you need to print or need to receive print copies of one of our FNS materials, let's say you want some of the worksheets, maybe the whole grain worksheet to do a training on whole grains. We'd like to be able to fulfill those print requests for team nutrition materials. So we will be sending out a document and just asking you to indicate if you need copies of one of our team nutrition materials. Let us know how many you need and when you need it. Print orders do take about 6 to 8 weeks. So once we send this out, the sooner you get it back to us, the sooner we can fulfill your request. So additional information on that and the actual document will be in our follow-up email. And we will just clarify on the non-discrimination statement to ensure that we have the latest version. So thank you all again for attending. We're excited to see the training that you all are able to implement in your state. So have a great day, and please reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thank you.